Welcome to the Bare Essentials Podcast, where the talk is real and hibernating on your goals is not an option.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Charles Wallace. I started this podcast to help motivate and hopefully inspire some people, hence the slogan, never hibernate on your goals. I think it's important to remember that those goals should include things you're passionate about, your dreams. And know this, the distance between those dreams and your reality is called action. Today's guest is someone who has chosen to follow his passion, and his actions have allowed him to fulfill his dreams. Allow me to introduce to you the lead singer and guitarist for the indie rock band Felipe Pablo, J.R. DeFrancisco. J.R., thanks for joining and welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm fantastic, Charles. Thanks so much for having me.
So, JR, would you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, J.R. DeFrancisco. I've been playing guitar since I was 7 years old, but seriously for only about 10 years or so. I don't consider myself much of a vocalist outside of the shower or my car, but I have been owning the singing duties in Felipe Pablo for about 5 years now.
Interesting. So you don't consider yourself a vocalist, more a guitar player who sings, I guess. So I'll ask them, what guitars do you currently use or own?
I have them right here. Give me a moment. So my most expensive guitar, this is my Fender Custom Telly. Basically, it's a 62 reissue that was made in the 80s. It looks like a Bruce Springsteen guitar if you're a fan, with that nice white trim. Oh yeah. This is my Epiphone Casino, a la John Lennon, except I bought red because it's fire. This is my main go-to. This is my Fender Stratocaster. It's a 77 Strat, custom built by a vocalist and guitarist from one of my favorite bands in Chicago, Dovetail Joint. Actually used to have his signature on the back, but it's worn out over the years. The Seymour Duncan rails here, those pickups are really where it's at, man. So anyway, those are my guitars. Recently, I started dabbling with ukulele. And mandolin. So yeah, that's pretty much my setup. I've got a bunch of acoustic guitars over there as well, but that's pretty much my main go-to electric guitars.
Okay, so you convinced me. I see how you light up when you talk about guitars. So I definitely can see the passion with the guitars. Love it. So, okay, what's the story behind the name?
Well, so Felipe Pablo actually rose out of the ashes of a prior band called Faux Pas, which actually probably has a funnier name. But anyway, when my kids were much younger, they were in very silly moods one night when the band came over for rehearsals for a show. And we came upstairs and they were just uncontrollably laughing and told us, hey, you guys should rename your band Felipe Pablo. I truly have no idea where they came up with that. And I've asked them multiple times. They have no idea why either. But it just stuck. And then within no time, our bassist, Randy, had a new song called Felipe Pablo. So anyway, a lot of stuff that the band does, especially our songs, are based on just funny stories to us that make little to no sense to anybody else.
Okay, so besides you, let me ask you this. You mentioned Randy. Who else? Who is Felipe Pablo?
Yeah, let me give shout outs to the guys. So I have Randy Hansen on bass and backing vocals, and Mike McClatchy on drums, and then myself on guitars and vocals. The band itself formed, like I said earlier, about 5 years ago, so in 2017. And as of today, in just 5 years, we have 22 original songs out there, across 9 releases, and we just have so much more on the horizon.
Well, so you guys have been really busy. 22 original songs over 5 years. Are these mostly singles?
Yeah, we actually started by releasing EPs. Our first was a 4-song EP called Bang Bang Hard, which released in January of 2018, which we pretty much just fully recorded in my basement, to be honest.
It just brings back a memory to me. My uncle, Tom, great guitar player in his own right, back 80s, early 90s, had a band called Simon Catholic. There was times where I would go over there with him and dabble, and we would mess around, and I would actually sing in his basement. And I just remember the basement setup and how much fun it was. And total sounded like crap, I did, but it was some of the best memories I ever have. So I think nowadays, and even going back, that's the way most bands start, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Exactly. And I'm here in my basement. It still is one of my favorite spots. Not that I don't love playing out live, but this stage and this setup and just the sound that I feel like we get is just great. But yeah, so not too long after that, we did another 5-song EP. This one was called Too Fast, Too Loud. We put that out the same year, 2018. I think it was in September that we dropped that one. So that one, we actually went to a place called Tritonics Recording, which is a local studio that I've used for various projects over the years. But,
Still basement or garage sounding.
Exactly. Love the guy, love the place, but it just didn't have the sound. So while we're being super ambitious with the number of songs we're recording and releasing right away, we just weren't focusing at the beginning on the output. We were just kind of amateur from that perspective. But I think it was just because we were excited to get the songs out there. So anyway, yeah, don't get me wrong. We love the songs, and I probably hear from most fans about the second EP, Too Fast, Too Loud. But at that point, we were still trying to find our sound. Like, it just didn't sound like something that would fit on the radio.
So I have to ask, have you found your sound? The reason I ask is because, and this is just, it's my opinion, but the latest release, Let's Go, to me, it sounds like you found your sound. And I will say this, having heard pretty much all your other material, for you, the non-vocalist, I would say that I feel like this song, you really found your voice.
I mean, I'll just say thank you. I mean, that I truly appreciate that. It means the world to me. I'll answer that in kind of 2 parts, I guess. So I think we've locked in our sound as far as instruments, amps, pedals, and the technology we're using at this point. And I think we finally locked in the recording process that works best for us. But the sound of a band as a whole, I hope is still evolving. Interestingly enough, you brought up Let's Go. I wrote that one about 10 years ago. It just finally found the right home. But to your point about vocally, I'll be honest. Yeah, I'm a bit more confident, or maybe just less worried or caring with the newer stuff. I just go for it the best I can. Where I definitely held back a touch in the earlier stuff. I just wasn't ready to man the mic yet. And now after doing it for 5 years, I'm finally feeling a bit more comfortable in those shoes.
Okay, so you go from the basement to the studio. Where? What happens next?
Yeah, so after Tritonics, we then went into a much more legit studio called Love Sound, owned by Steve E. It's in Philadelphia, and we knocked out our third EP called Robot Revolution. This one was a 4-song EP that we released right at April 2020. So we really thought this one was the one. We were just starting to reach out to a whole bunch of venues, trying to book a bunch of shows to back this release. And actually, just a little fun fact, my wife joins me with vocals in one of the songs from that EP called Be the Change. But anyway, then boom, of course, right as we're, releasing that and it's starting to get out there, COVID hit, which impacted all of us, of course.
Yeah, I definitely hear that. I mean, honestly, we could probably spend a whole entire podcast just on COVID and the pandemic. And
Yeah.
at this
How much
point,
time do you have?
yeah, no, I want to be positive moving forward, and I think everybody needs the positivity. So
Yeah. Yeah. So we try not to let that stop us too. So for Felipe Pablo, while we couldn't play any live shows as we had hoped, we just kept writing and using that crazy time to remain as creative as possible.
well, listen, I guess as a positive, right? If we could take a positive from it all, I guess you guys being able to get together and write during the pandemic and use that time wisely sounds like it was a great use of time for you guys.
100%. Even though we had just dropped that third EP that we were excited about, yeah, we spent the second part of 2020 just writing and collaborating. And so like in 2021, we moved away from that 4 or 5 song EP that I keep talking about, and we released actually 3 singles, each with a B-side, which we thought was a heck of a lot of fun because we're old school guys. So we're like, hey, there's an A-side, there's a B-side. But in the end, that was another 6 songs that dropped that year, and we just put it out as separate singles instead of an EP. This year, 2022. We're focusing more on true singles, 1 song releases with no B-side.
So I have to ask, like, and I get it, right? Because I'm definitely a music guy myself, and I can see that the industry kind of is changing as far as the way music's listened to. So what made you guys go that route?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you nailed it. It not only the industry, but it just seems to be the right fit for today's world in general. There's so much content for people to absorb daily, social media, music, all of that anything more than 1 song at a time just seems to be too overwhelming and almost not worth it for the listener. And so, yeah, Let's Go, the song you mentioned, our latest single, we dropped that on March 4th, seems to be doing really well, better than any prior release in the first few weeks. And it, again, coincidentally, it's our first true 1-song single.
So I think you touched on something interesting there. There's a basic shift in the way people consume music. I think we all see it as far as streaming and things like that. And I think it shows, you say coincidence, how this newest release seems to be doing really well. I don't know if it's a coincidence, right? I think you guys as a band, like, adapting. I feel like that probably had something to do with it. So do you, as a band, right? I know professionally we all try to do this, but as a band, do you guys have goals that you really try to, like, literally write down and stick to as you proceed?
Goals, 100%, Charles. I approach the band and our plans and our releases very much like I do my goals in my life, be it professional or personal. So sometime around November, December, towards the end of every year, we're plotting out as a band what we want to do in the coming year to continue evolving and finding ways to gain more listeners. And so, as we talked about, moving from EPs to 2-song singles to 1-song singles. So, in 2022, because we, met in November, December to talk about our goals for 2022, our focus is similar to 2021 in that we're moving away from tons of demo sounding songs, the basement stuff, and focus on releasing stuff that we're just excited about, like the final sound, radio sounding in our ears. And so we're spending more and more time using newer technologies and just ensuring that things sound, again, more radio friendly versus garage or basement sounding.
I guess the trade-off, though, honestly, right, that has to take more time.
I mean, definitely. You would think, certainly the technology makes things better, but it's definitely more time consuming. And because it takes more time, that means less releases. But in the end, I think, it's worth it sound quality wise anyway.
Well, speaking of radio sound quality, I have to tell you, I loved your song Christmas Time. It actually made it onto my holiday playlist, which should be an honor because that's reserved for mainly the killers. So you made the list.
Yeah, the Killers are definitely prominent on mine too. They really, honestly, they were back of our mind. First of all, thanks, appreciate that. It's definitely a fun, upbeat one for us. And yeah, so during the pandemic, not going back to that, but we also started this annual tradition. To your point about trying to be positive during that time. So we decided to start this whole tradition of let's do stuff like that the Killers do, and actually Pearl Jam has done in the past. They just kind of stopped doing, and that's releasing an original Christmas song. And we try to put that out like somewhere right after Thanksgiving, like the Friday after Thanksgiving. And so we've released two Christmas songs so far. The one in 2020 was called Super Cool Christmas. And the one that you mentioned, Christmas Time, dropped November 2021. And so we also have a third one planned for this November.
Nice. I can't wait. And also Super Cool Christmas is on my playlist too. So you have both.
Oh, yeah. All right.
So that being said, any ideas? What's the next single going to be?
Before that Christmas song, we're choosing between a couple of other originals that we've done some tracking for, or perhaps looking to release our first ever cover song.
Okay, hold up. Cover song. What is it?
It's interesting. We haven't put out one yet. So it's actually Khalid's Young, Dumb, and Broke, which is funny enough. We love it. We basically Felipe Pablo the song to be like a lot more rock. To be honest, again, it's been a favorite of my wife's for years. So I'm just happy we're talking about finally releasing a version of that in the coming months.
Well, listen, I can't wait to hear that. It's just the concept is extremely interesting to me because I love when bands take a song that you would never expect and they switch it up. So I can't wait to hear that. And I hope it actually gets you even more listeners, some new listeners, as I'm hoping today's podcast will, get you some new listeners. Even if it's just, even if it's some Khalid fans, come over to the other side and get Felipe Pablo'd, so to speak. So I want to go back a little bit, but when you say about plotting specific detailed goals for a band's sounds, it sounds like a lot of work to like have goals for the specific sound. And I know it's similar to what people do in their professional careers. Yet when it comes to writing music, it's something that probably many people just look at as a hobby. And obviously to you, it's clearly more than that. So talk to me about some other music or projects that are non-Felipe Pablo that maybe you're involved in, even currently and in the past. And even I meant to ask you, how did Felipe Pablo form? So
yeah, okay. Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I'm definitely proud to say I'm up to about 2.5 hours of original material that's out there everywhere you can stream music.
Holy shit. That's incredible. Yeah. Congrats.
Thank you. And like I said, that's all been within the last 10 years that I've been serious with the playing guitar. Asked a couple questions there. I'm trying to unpack them. So high school cover bands aside, the first real band 10 years ago was Faux Pas. We put out an EP and then a full length album. So we had about pretty close to 20 songs that we put out between 2012 and 2013. We, as a band, played out a lot as Faux Pas, mostly bars and clubs across the state of Pennsylvania. And so the singer eventually just lost interest, got burnt out. And so the rest of the band, though, just hung together. And so eventually we reformed into what is now Felipe Pablo. Interesting enough, we actually just started collaborating with the vocalist from Faux Pas again. His name is AJ Petrolati. And he and members of Felipe Pablo have sort of a side project going on right now. It's called Jasper's Law. And it's been a blast, to be honest, to sort of reconnect. And it's something AJ and I have been talking about doing for a long time. And so we actually dropped our first single as Jasper's Law in January of this year. And we have another single coming up probably in another month or two.
Jasper's Law. I will definitely check that out.
Awesome. Please do. I will also note, so right in between Faux Paul sort of disbanding and Felipe Pablo forming, I also did this 5-song EP in 2015 with this guy named Wes Wagner under the band name The Main Line. Wes is doing incredible things right now with his band Midfield. Plug for Midfield, look them up. They have tons of fans and they play all over the place. So Wes and I met when we did this Pearl Jam tribute show around their 20th anniversary, and we held a show at both Chaplin's in Spring City, which is named after Charlie Chaplin, who used to perform there back in the day, and World Cafe Live in Philly.
I was there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You were there. That's right. The downstairs, the bigger venue. It was a blast. So anyway, Wes and I are 20 years apart in age. So we actually wanted to call the band Ages Apart, but it was taken. So we called the EP Ages Apart. So quick plug for the EP. So yeah, it was only 5 songs, but there's a couple songs on there that to this day are my favorite originals. And one other plug after Wes, most recently I've been asked to sort of moonlight on rhythm guitar for a cover band called Static Quo. The Felipe Pablo drummer, I mentioned his name before, but Mike McClatchy, he's actually been in that cover band for 25, 30 years now. So I was thrilled to ask to potentially tag along. I actually started rehearsing with them last night, which is why I'm exhausted, but we had a blast. Our goal is to maybe land a gig in summertime, June, July. But man, this is my first time playing covers since high school, so it was interesting but fun.
So I know we said it, man. You're so busy. It's obvious, right? And I gotta say, it's crazy to me that you can accomplish all this and you still have a full-time, busy day job. So,
Amen.
So now, talk to me a bit though about, because I know it takes more time, and I know you're trying to get the sound and you're putting more focus on the quality of the sound, but about the time, right? So talk to me a bit more about that good quality mixing that you referred to earlier. And who's doing that for Felipe Pablo? Yeah,
great question. Favorite one so far. As I mentioned, we've dabbled with just about everything, right? We've used that place I mentioned, Tritonics. We've used Love Sound in Philly in the past for tracking and some mixing. But today, all of the Felipe Pablo and Jasper's Law tracks are mixed and mastered by Neo Retro Recordings. Coincidentally, Felipe Pablo's bass player, again, his name is Randy Hansen. He's at the steering wheel with Neo Retro.
So it's his studio.
Yeah, exactly. It's a major benefit. Like Randy, he knows exactly how we want to sound with each release. Like, for one, he writes a lot of the material, but also we play together every week. So he knows this song that we're writing now, it's kind of Green Day, or this one sounds like Pearl Jam, or this is a little bit more Kings of Leon mellow or whatever. So he's great with that.
Well, I would imagine, like, obviously to me, I mean, it takes the guesswork out, right? And I feel like most producers that you're not familiar with, that's part of the hardest part in the beginning, is trying to figure that out. So I guess that's a huge advantage.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, selfishly for a second, as an artist, you also feel less guilty when it takes, 15 to 20 versions of the mix that they're doing to say, yeah, this is the one, when the guy doing the mixing is also in your band. So yeah, honestly, just one last plug for Randy. He's a musical prodigy. Not only does he play bass, but he mixes the music for us. His musical journey is like physically, I just learn something new about the guy every week. It's stuff only some of us can dream of, touring the world, playing every cool venue I wish I played. He has endless stories, and just the gear is insane. I think he's got 15, 20 guitars, several bass, recording stuff. He has so much gear he could open his own retail space. And so anyway, again, truly blessed to have Randy mixing and mastering our stuff at this point.
So this is all, I'm a huge Beatles fan, as you know, right? And I always think about the dynamic between John and Paul and the rest of the guys and what goes into the songwriting process. I feel like most bands, it varies, right? So what's the Felipe Pablo songwriting process like?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're definitely rocks, and so like Beatles, like, I wish I was that great, but we did try to adopt a lot of what the Beatles do, and like other bands that we love, like Pearl Jam, where it's a major collaborative effort, and so each song, definitely has its own story on how it came together, but from the highest of levels, how it comes together. So lyrics typically come from a combination of me and Randy, again, bass player. Same with the music. The compositions are mostly coming from, again, a combination of the two of us. So we will essentially just take turns writing demos, and we'll bring those demos to the live rehearsals. And basically, as the song comes to us naturally, though, like we're never like forcing each other to write the next song. So like we just randomly are showing up with demos, like nobody knows when the next one's coming. And the second Mike, the drummer, gets wind of a new song that Randy or I are trying to iron out or teach each other, he has the drum parts like almost immediately. It's truly incredible. And that's, to me, when the song starts to become what it's meant to be. It's when we're all like sitting there in a live setting trying to work it out. Like it doesn't matter who wrote the chords or lyrics initially, because it's probably going to sound different anyway. And so the magic is in that live thing coming together, massaging the song to what it's meant to be. It's truly great. And so just to finish that out, I would say Randy and I have basically an even 10-10 split with writing the lyrics and music for Felipe Pablo at this point. So again, just a true partnership with the whole writing process.
Nice to hear that, because I can just imagine. Obviously, you hear some of the horror stories about bands and when they break up, right? It almost sounds though for you guys, it's truly collaborative, which has to make it more fun and has to make it just you're excited to get into the studio. So I feel like that's a great way to do it. I wanted to ask you a bit about how you would categorize your sound, and maybe talk a bit about what bands influence your music.
That's the best question so far, Chow. Thanks. So sure. Top of mind. Influences to both me and the entire band. It's Pearl Jam, Green Day, Nirvana, Social Distortion, Kings of Leon. These are bands that we love and we do covers of when we're just playing around for fun. So for the band, again, our focus is basically on catchy jams that have this positive, fun energy. We like to say out there on Spotify, the songs have this groove and punch that will get your head bopping and your legs dancing. So, so basically, if you're a fan of rock, or alternative, or punk, or blues, just fun, upbeat licks, we hope Felipe Pablo is the next band that you add to your playlist. But for me personally, outside of the band, in high school, it was, I was focused basically on punk rock, Minor Threat, 7 Seconds, The Misfits, some metal-y-ish type of stuff too, like Faith No More, Metallica, Jane's Addiction. College moved on to everything from Beastie Boys to Blind Melon to the Mighty Mighty Bosstones to Public Enemy. But, besides my wife and kids, music truly is my life, Charles. So I can say that I've been influenced by too many artists to name, and I've been to too many concerts to name.
All right. How about most recent concert?
Most recent. So I would say within the last couple of years, actually most recently I saw Judah and the Lion and the Killers at Firefly. And right before the pandemic, saw 21 Pilots and Judah and the Lion by themselves outside of Firefly. So those few are really become some fun ones and the most recent ones for me. And then as far as super recent, I've become sort of re-addicted to Limp Bizkit, and my wife and I are going to see them in May. So yeah, wide range.
Yeah, definitely. So JR, I wanted to end with this. For how can people follow you on social media and stay connected with Felipe Pablo and also any of your other side projects?
Yeah, thanks, Charles. So for Felipe Pablo, we're at Felipe Pablo Band on both Instagram and Twitter. We have a link tree that's in our profile that essentially will direct you to a bunch of stuff. So it'll give you the landing for this is where you can listen to our music on Spotify or Apple or Amazon or YouTube. We also have some merch out there. We've done a few different drops of different types of merch. And so some of that's out there. Jasper's Law is a little newer, so I think I just have an Instagram for them so far. It's Jasper's Law Band. And also we have some merch in the link tree that's available in the bio of the Jasper's Law.
Awesome. So everyone, please check out JR and Felipe Pablo.
Please do.
JR, I can't thank you enough for spending time with us today, and I'm really looking forward to the next Felipe Pablo release.
Thank you so much for having me, Charles. It means the world. And I hope, this helps your podcast and gains you some listeners. And I hope it gains us some fans that are loving your podcast.
Yeah, and on that note, I can't thank everyone enough for tuning in. And as you can see, regardless of your age or what you have going on in your life, you can truly accomplish whatever you set your mind to. So just start replacing your excuses with your passions, and your dreams will become reality. There'll be true bright spots in your life. I can't say that enough. Listen, I'm not saying it's easy, but the alternative, living your life in the darkness of regret, that's even harder. So keep chasing your dreams, and you will catch them. Take care. Bye.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening, and remember, never hibernate on your goals.